Actually, Claire will be stepping back from her current role. The conference room went silent. My brother's hand rested casually on the polished table, like he owned it. The clients from Sterling Hospitality Group looked confused. My father cleared his throat, but didn't correct him. I'll be taking over as managing director effective immediately, my brother continued, flashing that practiced smile. Fresh leadership, bigger vision, new energy. I felt heat crawl up my neck. What? The word came out smaller than I intended. I hated how weak it sounded. My father finally spoke. It's what's best for the company, Claire. We discussed this. We hadn't discussed anything. The employees I'd personally trained avoided my eyes. My laptop screen flickered with a notification. System access denied. They'd already revoked my credentials. Then my brother, Marcus, said the words that changed everything. We're finalizing the Sterling contract next week. We just need Claire's signature as co-owner to make it official. That's when I realized they'd already decided my fate. My name is Claire Callahan. I was 32 years old, and I'd built this hospitality consulting company from the ground up with my mother before she passed. My brother had just tried to erase me. The Sterling representatives shook Marcus's hand. Polite applause filled the room. Our senior staff, people I'd hired and mentored, clapped along. I forced a smile so tight my jaw ached. Marcus leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't make this ugly, Claire. Just sign when the time comes." Ugly? I remembered staying up for 3 consecutive nights, drafting the Sterling proposal, researching their pain points, creating customized solutions. While Marcus had shown up 15 minutes late to our rehearsal meeting, smelling like expensive cologne and bringing nothing, my father gathered his folders, still refusing to meet my eyes. I said nothing, because I'd learned that silence could be more powerful than screaming. But when I returned to my office, my nameplate was gone from the door, and my replacement, some 26-year-old business school graduate Marcus had hired, was already unpacking boxes at my desk. She looked up apologetically. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were still here." Still here, like I was already a ghost. I grabbed my personal items from the drawer and left without a word. That night, my father called it a strategic transition. We sat in his home office, the same room where my mother and I had planned the company's first expansion. "You've always been steady, Claire," he said, using that patronizing tone. "Reliable. But Marcus is bold. He's charismatic. Clients respond to that kind of energy. Translation, he's the sun, the air, the one who matters." I reminded him calmly that I'd secured 70% of our current client accounts. He sighed like I was being emotional. "Don't make this personal. It's business." But it had always been personal. When my mother died 3 years ago, I'd stayed. I'd worked 18-hour days to keep the company stable during our grief. I'd postponed my wedding, eventually losing my fiancé because I was never available. Marcus had left for 2 years to find himself in Europe, and somehow I was the one who'd become replaceable. But sitting in that office, looking at my father's tired face, I remembered something he'd apparently forgotten. The ownership structure my mother had insisted on before she passed. The documents were in my apartment. I left without arguing further. I pulled out my mother's estate documents that night, spread them across my kitchen table under harsh LED lights. The ownership structure had been updated 8 months before she died. She'd made me witness the signing, though I hadn't understood why at the time. My father held 49% of the company. I held 51%, controlling interest. Marcus? 0 shares. He'd been written out entirely after abandoning the company during a critical growth period. I sat back slowly, letting the implications sink in. Marcus could play CEO all he wanted, could strut around the office making promises and shaking hands. But without my signature, that Sterling contract was worthless. The expansion plans he'd probably already announced? They couldn't move forward. And based on a conversation I'd just had, neither he nor my father had reviewed the ownership documents recently. They'd assumed. They'd taken for granted. They had no idea. I made copies of everything and locked the originals in my safe deposit box. Then I waited. Over the next week, Marcus performed his new role like he was running for office. He strutted through the office with expensive suits and that manufactured confidence. He promised expansion to new markets, talked about opening offices in 3 new cities, mentioned hiring 20 new staff members. The current employees ate it up. Some had always preferred him anyway. He was charming, bought drinks after work, remembered birthdays. I'd been too busy actually working to cultivate that kind of loyalty. He scheduled a press release announcing the Sterling partnership, coordinated with our marketing team for a full campaign rollout. He never once consulted me. He assumed I'd fall in line, sign whatever documents appeared in front of me, play the good daughter and step aside gracefully. I let him assume, because overconfidence is always loudest right before it breaks. I showed up to the office each day, worked on projects they'd transitioned to me, basically administrative tasks beneath my skill level, and watched Marcus build his house of cards. A week after the transition, I received an alert from our finance department. Marcus had authorized a massive credit extension to support expansion initiatives. $2 million, without majority shareholder approval. I read the notification 3 times. Legally, he couldn't authorize that kind of financial commitment alone. The company bylaws my mother had written required majority owner approval for any debt exceeding $500,000. But Marcus was clearly banking on my silence, on me being too timid or too hurt to challenge him. I forwarded the document to our corporate attorney, Patricia Chin, who'd worked with my mother for 15 years. Is this legally binding without my approval? I asked in the email. Her response came within an hour. Absolutely not. And if he proceeds, he could be held personally liable for unauthorized financial commitments. I saved her email, and I didn't say a word to Marcus or my father. I just waited and watched. 2 days later, Marcus invited me to dinner with the Sterling executives. Public optics, he explained in a curt email. The clients know you worked on the initial proposal. Your presence maintains continuity. Continuity. Like I was a decorative element. I showed up anyway. The restaurant was expensive. The kind of place Marcus loved because the wine list impressed people. He introduced me to the Sterling team as still part of the family, of course. Still part, not partner, not co-founder, just someone who hadn't quite left yet. I smiled. I nodded. I played the role he'd assigned me. The lead investor, a sharp woman named Victoria Sterling, asked about our logistics projections for the expansion. Marcus answered confidently. Incorrectly. He inflated our capacity by at least 30%, promised timelines that were physically impossible given our current staffing. I took a slow sip of water and let him talk. Victoria's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of concern, but she said nothing. Marcus kept selling, unaware he was building a foundation on sand. I excused myself early, citing a headache. Patricia called me the next morning. I reviewed the credit authorization Marcus submitted, she said. If he signs that line of credit without majority approval, he becomes personally liable for the debt. The company isn't. Personally liable, I repeated. Yes. And given the terms he negotiated, if the expansion fails or the company can't meet obligations, creditors could come after his personal assets. House, savings, everything. I asked her to prepare documentation, quietly, nothing that would alert Marcus or my father. She understood immediately. I'll have everything ready by Friday. Marcus thought he'd cornered me, thought he'd maneuvered me into irrelevance. But I was just giving him space to hang himself. Every unauthorized decision, every promise he couldn't keep, every financial commitment beyond his authority. I was documenting it all. The press release went live on Tuesday morning. Callahan Hospitality enters historic expansion partnership with Sterling Group. The announcement included photos of Marcus shaking hands with Victoria Sterling, quotes about visionary leadership and bold new direction. My name appeared once, in the third paragraph, past tense, building on the foundation established by co-founder Claire Callahan. Past tense, like I was already gone. Employees congratulated Marcus in the hallway. My father beamed like he'd won something. I read every word of that press release carefully. There were promises in there the company legally couldn't fulfill without my approval. Commitments that exceeded our current capacity. Timeline guarantees that contradicted our actual operational capabilities. Marcus had promised things he couldn't deliver, and he'd done it publicly. Interesting. I saved copies of everything. The press release, the social media announcements, the quotes attributed to Marcus. All of it would matter soon. Thursday afternoon, Marcus sent me a calendar invitation. Sterling contract signing ceremony. Friday, 10 a.m. The message below read, "Need your signature as co-owner. Let's not embarrass ourselves in front of the clients. Professional appearance matters." Embarrass ourselves? I stared at the email for a long moment. Then I replied with one word, confirmed. He probably thought he'd won, that I'd accepted my diminished role and would sign obediently. He had no idea what was coming. That evening, I met with Patricia in her office. I need to request a formal internal review, I told her. As majority shareholder, that's within my rights, correct? She smiled slightly. Absolutely. And given the timing, it would freeze any major contracts until the review is complete. How long does a review take? As long as you need it to. I nodded. Let's begin. The night before the signing ceremony, I submitted my formal request for an internal financial review. Perfectly legal. Perfectly timed. Patricia filed it through proper channels at 6 p.m., too late for Marcus to respond, but early enough to be logged officially. By 9 p.m., the finance department had sent me preliminary reports Marcus had never bothered to examine. There was a significant cash flow gap. Our current revenue couldn't support the expansion he'd promised. Without the credit line, he couldn't legally authorize. He'd committed to deliverables we couldn't sustain. The numbers were damning. I sat in my apartment reading through spreadsheets and projections, and I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not vindication, just clarity. For years, I'd wanted my father's approval, his recognition, his pride. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, sleep, all to prove I was worthy of being his partner. But he'd given that position to Marcus without hesitation, without considering my contributions or capabilities. Tomorrow wouldn't be emotional. It would be precise. I barely slept. At 6 a.m., I dressed in my most professional suit. Navy. Conservative. The kind of outfit that communicated seriousness. I reviewed my documents one final time. The ownership papers. The financial reports. The legal opinion from Patricia. Everything was organized. Tabbed. Ready. At 9:30, I arrived at the office. The conference room was already set up. Flowers on the table. Catering arranged. A photographer positioned in the corner for publicity photos. Marcus had planned quite a show. I took my seat and waited. Staff filtered in. My father arrived looking proud. The Sterling executives came in together, Victoria leading. Marcus arrived last, shaking hands as he entered. He shot me a look that said, "Behave." I smiled politely. The contract sat in the center of the table. All 186 pages. Marcus had already signed. My father had signed. The Sterling team had signed. Only my signature remained. Shall we finalize this? Victoria asked, looking between Marcus and me. Marcus slid the contract toward me with that confident smile. Just need Claire's signature, and we're official. I didn't pick up the pen. I have a few questions first, I said calmly. The room shifted, a subtle change in energy. Marcus laughed lightly, performatively. We've reviewed everything thoroughly, Claire. It's all standard. I'm sure you think you have, I replied. But as majority shareholder, I have some concerns. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. Majority shareholder? I turned to Victoria, ignoring my brother. Are you aware that the projected expansion timeline relies on a $2 million unsecured credit extension that hasn't been approved by majority ownership? Silence. Victoria's expression sharpened. I was told financing was secured. Marcus told you that, I said. But legally, he doesn't have authority to secure it. My father spoke up. Claire, this isn't the time. Actually, this is exactly the time, I interrupted. Before contracts are signed that commit this company to obligations it can't meet. I pulled documents from my folder and slid them across the table. Financial projections showing the cash flow gap. The company bylaws outlining approval requirements. Patricia's legal opinion on Marcus's unauthorized commitments. You're promising deliverables that violate the company's own contingency policies, I said to Victoria. Without proper financing approval, you're entering a contract with a partner who can't fulfill the terms. The Sterling team began flipping through pages quickly. Marcus's hand tightened around his pen. This is completely out of line. No, I said evenly. What's out of line is committing to a partnership you can't execute. My father looked confused, then worried. Victoria studied the documents, her expression growing more concerned with each page. Mr. Callahan, she said, looking at Marcus, is this accurate? You don't have financing secured. Marcus stammered. It's manageable. The credit approval is just a formality. A formality that requires my signature, I added, which I haven't given. Victoria set down the contract. I need to confer with my team, she said diplomatically. She and the other Sterling executives stepped out into the hallway. The conference room erupted the moment they left. What are you doing? My father demanded. Protecting the company, I said calmly. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You're sabotaging this out of spite. No, I'm preventing you from making commitments you can't keep. There's a difference. You're bitter about the transition, he accused. You can't handle that I'm better at this than you. I met his eyes steadily. If you were better at this, you would have reviewed the ownership structure before trying to replace me. What are you talking about? I pulled out the ownership documents and slid them across to my father. Mom gave me controlling interest. 51%. You have 49. Marcus has 0. My father's face went pale as he read. Every major decision requires my approval, I continued. Every financial commitment over $500,000. Every contract of this magnitude. You can't move forward without me. The room was absolutely silent. Victoria returned with her team 5 minutes later. Her expression was professional but cool. We need to reassess this partnership, she said. Given the discrepancies in the financial structure and the apparent lack of internal alignment, we can't proceed with signing today. Reassess was corporate language for no. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but Victoria raised her hand. We'll be in touch once you've resolved your internal governance issues, she said firmly. Thank you for your time. The Sterling team gathered their materials and left. The photographer packed up his and used equipment. The catering staff quietly removed the champagne. The ceremony dissolved into uncomfortable silence. Marcus turned to me, fury burning in his eyes. You destroyed this. You sabotaged months of work. I stood, gathering my documents. No, I prevented you from destroying the company my mother built. My father just sat there, staring at the ownership papers. We need to talk, he said quietly. Yes, I agreed. We do. The emergency board meeting convened that afternoon. Our three-person board consisted of my father, myself, and our longtime business advisor, Thomas Wright. Patricia attended as legal counsel. She outlined Marcus's unauthorized financial commitments with clinical precision, the credit extension he'd tried to secure, the expansion promises that exceeded our capacity, the contract terms he'd negotiated without proper authority. Under company bylaws, these actions constitute significant governance violations, Patricia explained. If Ms. Callahan chose to pursue it, Mr. Marcus Callahan could be held personally liable for the debt and any damages resulting from broken contracts. My father sat very still throughout the presentation. For the first time in years, he wasn't defending Marcus. He was seeing the full picture. How did this happen? Thomas asked. How did no one review the ownership structure before this transition? I assumed, my father admitted quietly. I thought the shares were split evenly between Claire and me, with Marcus set to inherit. I never reviewed the documents after my wife passed. Mom knew what she was doing, I said. She protected the company from exactly this kind of impulsive decision-making. Thomas looked at me directly. As majority shareholder, what do you want to do? I'd thought about this question all night. I want a vote of confidence in current leadership, I said. Given the severity of these governance failures, the board needs to determine if Marcus is fit to continue as managing director. Marcus, who'd been sitting silent and angry, finally spoke. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. My father looked torn, conflicted, but he didn't argue. Thomas called for the vote. All in favor of maintaining Marcus Callahan as managing director. No hands raised, not even my father's. All opposed. My hand went up. So did Thomas's. After a long pause, my father raised his hand as well. The vote was unanimous. Marcus was removed from leadership, not by my vindictiveness, by his own reckless decisions. This is unbelievable, Marcus said, his voice shaking. You're choosing her over me? We're choosing competence, Thomas said simply. Nothing personal. But Marcus made it personal by storming out and slamming the door. In the empty hallway afterward, Marcus cornered me. His face was red, his expensive suit rumpled from stress. You planned this, he accused. You waited. You set a trap. Yes, I said calmly. You let me make promises to clients. Let me hire staff. Let me announce everything publicly, just so you could humiliate me. No, I corrected. I let you make decisions without proper authority, so you'd reveal exactly why Mom didn't give you ownership. He searched my face for guilt or uncertainty. He didn't find any. She never trusted you with this company, I continued. She knew you were impulsive, that you prioritized appearance over substance, that you'd chase growth without understanding the foundation. And you're perfect, he spat. No, but I'm careful. I'm thorough. And I actually care about preserving what Mom built instead of using it as a trophy. He had no response to that, because deep down he knew it was true. My father asked to meet me for dinner that evening. We sat in a quiet restaurant, neither of us touching our food. I'm sorry, he said finally. His voice sounded older, tired. I should have reviewed the ownership documents, should have consulted you before making the transition. Why didn't you? I asked. He was quiet for a long time, because Marcus reminded me of myself at that age. Confident, ambitious. I thought he deserved a chance to lead. And I didn't. You were always so capable that I took you for granted, he admitted. I assumed you'd always be there, quietly keeping things running while Marcus provided the vision. That's not a partnership, I said. That's exploitation. He nodded slowly. Your mother tried to tell me. In her last months, she kept saying I needed to trust you more, to see that you were the stronger leader. I thought she was just worried about leaving the company, but she was protecting it. Tears filled his eyes. She was protecting it from me, from my blind spots regarding Marcus. I felt my own throat tighten. What happens now? My father asked. I'd been thinking about that question constantly. I restructure, I said. Carefully, properly. Will you take the CEO position? I considered it. The title I'd wanted for so long. The recognition. But I realized something sitting there. I didn't need the title to have the power. I had the power through ownership, through competence, through the trust my mother had placed in me. I'll take operational control, I said. But I want to bring in an experienced CEO from outside the family. Someone with hospitality expertise who can scale us properly. My father looked surprised. You don't want to run it yourself? I want to build it right, I corrected. That means recognizing my own limitations and bringing in expertise where it's needed. Unlike Marcus, I know what I don't know. He smiled, slightly for the first time that evening. Your mother would be proud. I hope so. We ate in comfortable silence after that. Using my majority control, I initiated a buyout clause tied to leadership failure. Marcus's temporary shares, granted during the transition as part of his compensation package, were revoked per the company bylaws. He walked away with a severance package. Generous by any standard, but nothing close to ownership. He left without saying goodbye. My father and I had a difficult conversation about his role going forward. I want to step back, he admitted. I'm tired, and I clearly don't have the judgment I thought I did. We agreed he'd transition to chairman emeritus, attending board meetings but not making operational decisions. It was the right move for everyone. I spent the next month conducting a careful CEO search. I interviewed candidates with extensive hospitality experience, people who understood growth but also valued sustainability. I hired Amanda Foster, a 52-year-old industry veteran who'd successfully scaled 3 companies. She took one look at our operations and immediately identified inefficiencies Marcus had introduced. Within 3 months, we'd stabilized. I reached out to Victoria Sterling personally 6 months later. I owe you an apology for the chaos of our last meeting, I said. But I'd like to present a revised partnership proposal if you're willing to consider it. She agreed to meet. This time I brought actual numbers, conservative projections, realistic timelines, proof of our operational improvements under new leadership. This is what I expected the first time, Victoria said, reviewing the materials. Professional, grounded, sustainable. We signed a modified contract 3 weeks later. Smaller scope than Marcus had promised, but achievable and more profitable in the long term. The partnership launched successfully. Our staff worked reasonable hours, met deadlines, delivered quality results. Everything Marcus's version would have destroyed, we preserved. Within a year, the company's valuation had doubled, not through flashy expansion, through careful, competent management. My mother would have been proud. 2 years after the signing ceremony that never happened, my father retired completely. He sold his remaining shares to me at a fair price. No family discount. No guilt. Just a clean business transaction. You've earned this, he said at the signing. I should have seen it years ago. I became majority owner outright. The business my mother had started was now fully mine to steward. Marcus started his own consulting firm. I heard through mutual contacts that he struggled initially. His reputation had taken a hit, but eventually he found his footing. Smaller clients, more modest goals. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. He'd tried to erase me. I had protected what mattered. The story ended there. No reconciliation. No dramatic forgiveness. Just 2 people going separate directions. And I was fine with that. I learned something important through all of this. You don't fight for a seat at a table when you own the table. You don't argue with people who've decided you're expendable. You just wait, document, prepare, and when they need what only you can provide, when they need your signature, your approval, your participation, That's when you reveal exactly what they underestimated. I didn't scream at that signing ceremony, didn't lose my composure, didn't make threats. I simply stated facts, showed documentation, let their own decisions expose them. Marcus tried to take my role because he thought I was too gentle, too accommodating, too afraid of conflict. He was wrong about all of it. I wasn't gentle. I was strategic. I wasn't accommodating. I was documenting. I wasn't afraid of conflict. I was choosing my moment. My mother had given me controlling interest for a reason. She knew that real power isn't loud. It's patient. It waits until the moment someone needs your signature. Then it reminds them exactly who they're dealing with. I'm Claire Callahan, and I don't just own my seat at the table. I own the table itself.